All right, so when it comes to making a slab piece of clay to create a piece, these are a few examples of the ones that have been done for demonstrations in the past. Basically, we're starting with the slab and we're cutting out things along the side, making it nice and even all the way around it, and slumping it onto another bowl to get that bowl shape. So these will be around for you to be able to look at. These are some completed ones. A couple of these are kind of sharp on the bottom, so be careful if you pick up my glazed ones that are here for examples. All of these started the exact same way. You can see they're all severely different from each other. So however you make your first cuts will determine that. All right, so those are there. I'm going to start by wedging the clay, another term that you had on your quiz. What wedging means is to actually work the clay together. There's two reasons you do it. One is to make it so that it's even all the way through it with the water. The other reason is to get any air bubbles out of it there might be. If it's coming off of the block, it probably will not have air bubbles in it other than some really giant ones. That's already been pugged out of something, so it's de-aired when it's gone through it. This has air bubbles in it, so we need to make sure if it comes out of the pug that we do a little bit of wedging. There are two ways to wedge, and I'll go through this more when you're on the wheel itself. For you right now, this particular project doesn't create too big of air bubbles in it, so you don't have to do too much to it. You could just kind of work it together a little bit and make it into a ball to start with. I'll show you more when we actually get to the throwing part. Once you've made it into a ball, take the palm of your hand and kind of press it out. Notice the fact I'm not sitting down when I'm doing this. It takes a little bit of an angle to work through a lot of this stuff, a little bit of pressure. So all I'm doing is working it out a little bit. I think I grabbed a pretty big piece of clay to start this because all I need is something that's this size, the size of a paper towel when I go with it. So I'm going to do a little bit of throwing this out. If I had a slab roller, we could use that, but we don't have one. A lot of colleges do. We do it the other way of being able to just throw it out. It's a lot like a pizza dough, basically, if you've ever done any of that. You have to let it go at an angle. The things that people make a mistake when they let this go, you'll notice my hands are kind of going back and continuing through the swing. What people make a mistake of, and I'm just going to pull, actually, can you hand me that? I'll do this wrong a couple of times with this. They think that they need to get a pretty good swing to this, so they go like this and they go straight down at it. The problem with the straight down at it is that it causes it to kind of lump in the center of it. The outsides will smooth or will get thin, and the ends top will go. If you hear that sound, you're hitting it way too hard and you're going straight down. You're also going to make it stick to the wood when you're working on it. So pick it up, let it go at an angle, softly. It will stretch itself out. Notice that I'm picking it up different ways every once in a while so that it stretches kind of evenly. And I'm keeping my leg against the side of the table so that when this should be sliding. If I didn't have my leg there, it slides this way a little bit and it does it even more. You do this longer, so this keeps it up against there. Go until it's about the thickness of, your hand maybe on the side, a little bit less than that. Shouldn't be more than 1/2 inch, and it shouldn't be less than 1/4 inch. So if you can visualize that, that's great. I call it my rule of thumb. If it's should be thicker than your pinky, should be thinner than your thumb, basically. So once you get it to that stage, then you take one of the pieces of paper towel, lay it on top of it, makes a nice square. You're going to use a needle tool to cut. The needle tool, they're in on the wall in there. There is only 11 of them, so everybody has to share these. I'll probably grab out a few more from when we do this one to start with. We'll see, but you just kind of go around the edges. The thing that takes the longest on this project is the smoothing afterwards. So the actual cutting doesn't take very long. This is all now that can go back into the pug. Just going to pull that off the side. I have a little bit from earlier that I can put off to the side too. So this is the piece that I'm going to actually work on. Take the paper off of there. and I'm going to start cutting. Now the ones that are more rounded like this, I started by rounding off the tips of this, so I'll go ahead and round this one. You don't need to. A lot of these didn't. Even this one that has the swirl on it, I went just from the corner and down. Everything will, this one obviously was a square to start with. You can kind of see the shape that I took out of there was almost like a mountain, double mountain next to each other. Just start with one. I'm going to go ahead and round off the corners on this one. I'm going to keep that original piece that I cut off of there, and that original piece becomes the template that I work my way around with then. So I'm going to set that on that corner. I cut that corner off. Now notice that if you can see it, that corner didn't get quite as round as the rest, so I wouldn't want to pick that corner up and use it again. That's why I keep using that first corner over and over again, so that I don't keep getting worse on each corner if I make a mistake. So that rounded that out. Now I'm going to make a decision what I want to do with the cut. I'm going to go ahead and make kind of like a big check mark. Maybe I'll stop and do a second check coming up. A little like that double mountain kind of thing coming off of it. When I pick this up, you're going to set it down. You're going to rotate clockwise as you go around this so that you don't accidentally go the other direction. Again, you use this as a template. I'm going to keep these pieces off to the side because I'm going to use them as feet afterwards on my pot. So there they are off to the side for later. Now, before I go to do anything else, I'm going to decide if I want to do any marks inside of here. I'm going to do a cutout in the middle. I'm going to have to ease this one out of here. This is pretty soft clay. It's not wanting to let go, so I'm going to kind of cut a little bit again. And just set it on top and do the same thing all the way around. Now, these I know I'm not going to save, so I'm just going to put that on my scrap pile. Soft play. Take those out of there. I'll hold this up so that you can see it here once I get these out. And one corner didn't want to release, so I'm going to draw it in again and pull that clay out. So, very chunky right now. A lot of really rough sides to it. I want to make sure that I don't leave it that way. It's not going to look good if it stays like that. I'm going to put a piece of paper over top of it before I do any smoothing on it. This is a mistake people have made a lot in the past, is that they start smoothing this all out, and then what they do is they press it down into the board so hard that they can't get it off the board again. You need to make sure that you're doing so that this will release. I'm going to put it onto a bat. This is when I was talking yesterday about bats. This is what this is. It's a second surface to the head in there, basically, to be able to work on. So I'm going to set the bat on top of the paper. I'm going to flip. You can also do this with another board, but you might as well go straight onto a bat because you'll be working on that afterwards. So I'm going to turn it on its side there. I'm going to go ahead and smooth it out. I'm going to use a makeup sponge. The makeup sponges are super soft and they make a really good smoother for clay. I'm just going to put my finger behind when I run this along and run my finger over the edges, and this is going to do a quick smooth. Obviously I'm kind of rushing to get this done for you guys in time. I'm gonna just put it down inside of here, run it up the sides. Gonna need to level those out just a little bit. Obviously this one needs quite a bit of work. You can see in there. I'm gonna push my finger through first, and then I'm gonna smooth a little bit. If the surface itself needs a little bit of smoothing on it, I would take my finger and kind of crisscross and get that worked through. I'm gonna decide if I want any decorations on it. 3s are always a good number in art, so I'm gonna go ahead and do 3 little dots. Anything that you can find to press into pieces, make interesting stuff. I have some random things in here, everything from Tonka trucks that make really cool lines going on it, to the ball that you can kind of roll around on the surface and make a design, to jewelry that you can push down into it, all sorts of stuff that can create designs on. And there's also some stamps here that you can use the stamp, press it in, and make designs. Now I'm going to flip this onto another bat. You want to make sure that you're flipping this several times as you're working on it so you don't stick it down. Now you're keeping paper towel in between those, so at least it won't stick to the surface. I'm going to rinse this out just a little bit. These the cups are in the sink, so you can just grab a cup. Just when you put it back in there, just dump the water out and put the cup back up on top of the sink, not down in the sink itself. The sponges, I have a little basket on the side of the sink that you can toss those into. That keeps it off the bottom too, so that it doesn't sit there and rot on it. So run and smooth out this side. Again, I would take a long time doing this if I was doing this for myself for a project. I'm speeding. Okay. Now this is going to be the bottom of my piece, so I can decide I can put those little marks on here if I want to, or if I don't want to, I don't have to. I do want to put feet though. Feet are a very good thing on all pottery. Basically what a foot does is something so that it will stand up off of the table a little bit, or whatever surface that it's actually on. I'm just going to use the corner here and make kind of interesting little triangles on it. Let's see, I used that corner, cut across all of them at once and just use those. I'm going to decide what angle. Typically I would want to do 3 instead of 4. I'm only doing 4 because there is 4 cuts coming out from it, so it would be hard to level out and get the 3 on there even. And make sure I'm doing this the right direction each time. There. Okay, so that's going to be my 4 feet that it stands up on. Again, the reason I'm doing that is the cut marks that are coming out. Otherwise, I would use 3. If 3, when you look at stools, 3 legs will stand straight no matter whether one is slightly off from the other ones. All it will do is lean a little bit. If you have 4 legs that are in contact, if one of the legs is slightly off from the others, it rocks big time. So you want to make this so it's stable. When you go to connect the clay, you can't just do that and hope that it's going to stay there. It's not going to. You need to do what's called slipping and scoring. You're going to scratch the surface that is scoring. The scratching makes little fingers for it to hold on to. I'm just going to set it on there for a second. I'm going to score them all. It's going to. There are forks that are in the farthest drawer right there. I'm scratching both surfaces that come together. The fork just makes it so that this is quick. You can also do it with a pencil, your fingernail, needle tool, anything. Then I'm going to use slip. The slip bucket should stay in on the clay table at all times so that everybody can find it. So you take some slip, just goo a little bit on there. This is just watered down clay. I'm just going to use my finger because it's quicker and easier. Set it on there. I'm going to work it in just a second as soon as I know I have them on there even. Don't be skimpy with the slip. Be generous. The slip can always get wiped off if it oozes out the side. If you don't have enough slip there, what it leaves is a whole bunch of pockets of air. And the pockets of air expands faster than solid. All it will do is push that foot right off of there if you leave a pocket of air on there. Now I'm going to use my hand. Since I did all 4 at once, I'm just going to use my hand all together and kind of wiggle and get it to kind of work down in. Basically, we made the finger marks. If it's just laying like this, it can break apart really easily. If it's got the finger marks, even if it's just laying on top of each other, it might be like this. You're wiggling it, gets it down in so that they hold on tight and works together. Now, you'll notice that it oozed out just a little bit on the side. That's okay. Now I can take my finger or a pencil or anything like that and just get those out of there. Okay. Now again, I would take a lot of time smoothing on this. Get this down out of your way. Okay, now at this point, these are all connected. I'm going to put this onto a bowl. Now imagine the fact which way this bowl actually has to be. For the feet to be on the bottom, it needs to actually sit on it kind of like this. Obviously, I can't do that from here, so I'm going to need to flip it one more time. And I'm going to be gentle since I put feet on there. I don't want to hurt the feet. I'm going to put that there. Pick it up in your hands, one hand on top and one hand on bottom, nice and flat like that. Flip it over. If you kind of have that upward motion, it won't hurt anything. Take it off. Oops, I don't want to take this off actually. I want this between. Don't ever forget to keep something in between what you're working on in clay and what it's going to go onto. The reason is clay will stick to there fatally. So you're going to need to scrape it off of there if you were to work on this and forget to put something in between it. This is not going to come up off of there easily. You have to scrape it off of there and pry it, and you will hurt your piece on the way off. If you just put a piece of paper towel in between, it's got something to release. So I'm going to pick it up. I'm going to put it on there, kind of level it out as much as I can at first. Put one hand on the inside. I want you to make sure your hand is in there like this so that you have a good hold of it. You're going to flip. Set it down on the table before you do anything else to it so you don't drop it on the floor. Flip that off. Take it off. If you're wearing rings, you want to take those off because I leave marks on it all the time when I pat this down. Take a little time. It should be nice and smooth at this point. Leave my slip. Take a second to make sure it's on there pretty even coming up the sides. And then you're going to take your hand and you're going to kind of pat it, basically. I'm going to pat it down into place. If it were sticking out so it would actually stick onto the bowl, I would make sure there was another piece of paper towel underneath there so it doesn't stick. You'll look and see this seems to be a little bit close this way. So I want to pat it to get it to go down there because you're kind of coaxing it into place and letting the clay kind of work its way in. If all you do is push, the other side is going to want to push back. So you'll teeter-totter it basically. That makes the particles kind of work its way down. Make sure you have your names on them. Everything with names, I do not want initials. I have taught literally thousands of people now clay. I hate having to sit and think, okay, who has the first name that starts with A? Please put at least your first name on there. If you can, your whole name is awesome, but at least your first name. Remember again, these are going to last forever. And actually, needle tools are not the best to do this with. A dull pencil is actually the best to write your name in with, so I'll do that in a second since I don't have one up here. The reason not a needle tool is that it's so thin and it leaves those little sharp things coming up off the sides. Now, when you go to dry this out, you're going to need to keep it in your tubs for a couple of days and kind of take it out and work on it. Anytime you want this to start getting to the point that it can come off of there, you want to make sure that you take it out during class when you're working on it and then put it back in overnight in a tub or in a bag, whichever you're working on. If I was to just leave this out now and say, okay, I'm done, Now I'm going to let it dry off of there. Clay shrinks. Shrinks 2 times in the whole process of doing things. The first time it shrinks 10% when it's going from wet to dry. Now all that water is coming out and it shrinks that amount. It's going to shrink one more time in the final firing, another 10%. So total of 20% throughout all of time. But because that's shrinking, it wants to go somewhere, and this bowl is not going to let it go anywhere. So the only way you could do this is on the inside of a bowl, and then when it shrinks, it could actually go into the bowl. This is over the bowl, so I need to only do it until you can touch it and not leave fingerprints and make it feel like it's not going to flop over your hands like that one's going to flop over my hands right now. It's called leather hard. When it's leather hard and it will hold itself when you start flipping, then you can take it out of there and let it sit to dry out. If you're impatient and or just need to get it out of your tub to get other things to work into it, you can use a hairdryer on it. Hold the hairdryer up just a little ways from it. Don't get down near the surface. All that is hard on the hairdryer. It burns it out basically. So up a little ways off of the surface. I shouldn't hear any change in the tone of the hairdryer. Just kind of hold it in one place. You're not fluffing anything, so when you do this with your hair, I see people do this all the time. You're fluffing your hair when you do this. You don't have to fluff this. So just hold it in one spot. You might have to work your way around on the sides just to see so that it's nice and even everywhere. It doesn't take more than maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes to do it usually to get it so that you can get it off of there. Just be careful when you set it down then so it doesn't flop backwards like it was there. Okay, questions?